Frontier opening bell is Thursday, the 15th of February, and we're just counting down to the final half of the second half of the month. And just to get everyone started on the market side, of course, the Nigerian stock markets, starting from the top, the NGX was up 1.76%. Investors came back very strongly in the banking sector yesterday. Access Corp, UBA, Zenith Bank shares, FBN Holdings, all of those big stocks in the green territory, including Boa Foods from the consumer goods space. So the banking sector was up about 2%. Boa Foods also listed the consumer goods index to the upside. We saw a few declines yesterday. By the way, Boa Cement fell just around 9% on the Nigerian bourse. The BRVM was lifted by a couple of big names on this that exchange in Côte d'Ivoire, but that list includes names such as Bank of Africa, Senegal, and Bank of Africa, Côte d'Ivoire. The Egyptian stock market continued to waltz towards the end of its own trading week, which will be today. Yesterday, the EGX 30 was better by 95 basis points, roughly 1%. The Nairobi stock market took another step back, 0.75% after we saw about 2 days rally back-to-back in Kenya. Then, of course, the Johannesburg stock market, the GSE All-Share Index fell by just about 0.1%. A very major pullback yesterday by Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, roughly 4%. So let's take it to see what are the big news across East Africa. Of course, Kenya, starting with the news that about 70 billion shillings infrastructure bond fetched around 700 billion. The government, the treasury, as it were, took about 240 billion in that infrastructure bond, which was priced at about 8%. That's some good news for Ruto's administration. In the meantime, the government is throwing its heart in the ring, going for privatization. 7 companies, including the Development Bank of Kenya, and a couple of hotels in Kenya. Mombasa Hotel will also be on sale. Kenya Safari Hotel Lodge will also be for sale. And a couple of those names within the hospitality and leisure business in Kenya. We'll see what that will fetch. Tanzania, Burundi, and Rwanda says the 80 megawatts power plant handover is expected to be done in the month of April. In the meantime, President Hassan Suluhu of Tanzania is on an economic diplomacy trip, 2-day state visit to Norway. And finally, the World Bank is counting on tourism and exports to help Uganda revive its flagging economy after the World Bank shut Uganda out of its funding facility because of the country's death penalty imposed on homosexuals or gay practices in the East African economy. Those are your headlines east of the continent. Let's move to the western coast and see what's making some splash across the region as it were. The African Finance Corporation, which is headquartered in Lagos, yesterday named a new chairman of the board. Emeka Emu, of course, is not new to the board of AFC. Of course, he's been on the board as the head of the risk management and a few other positions committee within the board. Now he's been elevated to the chairman, the de facto chairman of the AFC, and we say congratulations to him. Then MasterCard also announced the Nigerian Folashade Femilawal as the new general manager for its operations in West Africa. If you take those two news about appointments out of the way, you've got Nigerian breweries making its third price increase announcement for the year. Nigeria's largest brewer shares was up on Monday about 1.06%. Despite this announcement, the prices will go up for the third time this year. This time being targeted at direct distributors in the western part of the country. In Ghana, President Nana Akufo-Addo go for what you call a complete house cleansing, 12 ministers, including 10 deputies, as well as the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, who walked through the country's nail-biting period of 2023, negotiating and working through the local debt rejigging program, as well as the foreign debt is now being shown the door. The Minister of State has stepped into Ken Ofori-Atta's shoes. As, of course, Ghana prepares for a general election very soon. Then you've got Bloomfield, which is a rating agency, confirming the BBB plus rating of Cité Africaine de Crédit Automobile, which is, of course, one of the companies in West Africa, French-speaking in Côte d'Ivoire. Those are your headlines in West Africa. What's the big story out of Southern Africa? Again, we're touching on this very big region with Zimbabwe coming on top of the list. The IMF says it's concluded its Article 4 consultations review report with Zimbabwe is looking at about 3.25% GDP decline for Zimbabwe in the current year. That's sharply lower than about 6% that Zimbabwe posted for 2023. That's in the news. In the meantime, Zimbabwe's Reserve Bank reports that it has piled up roughly 62,000 ounces of gold since its new royalties law was put in place towards the end of 2022. About a year or so on, the Zimbabwe says it's piled up, of course, a very decent amount of gold. Of course, the new royalties prescribes that mining companies will give their products to the Zimbabwean government as in terms of royalties instead of paying in cash. There's been a whole lot of wranglings, if you remember, around whether those royalties should be paid in US dollars or paid in the local currency, which is Zimbabwean dollar. In the meantime, Zambia yesterday raised its repo rate, its key lending rate, to 12.5%. That's the highest in 7 years. In the meantime, a day before that, on Tuesday, the Namibian Central Bank held its repo rate unchanged at 7.75% and the prime lending at about 11.5%. Keep those numbers in mind. Outlook is on Nigeria, Africa's biggest economic interest rate decision, February 26 and 27. Total Energy says it's committing about 5.7 billion Namibian dollars to oil sector in the Southern African economy, while South Africa's mining production was about 2.5% in Q4 of last year after 0.9% slump in 2022 fiscal period. Keep those headlines in mind as we step into a new business and markets day. Let's see what's going on in North Africa. Of course, Egypt is also preparing for a massive privatization that could fetch as much as 6.5 billion US dollars. That's what President El-Sisi's administration is working on, and we expect that to happen towards the end of the year. Part of the deals on the table to soften the fiscal tightness that President El-Sisi's administration is working through right now after the IMF says about $3 billion could be on the table for support to the North Africa's economy. Egypt's stock exchange has approved the listing of Suez Canal Bank's $12.8 million capital increase. That's some good news there for the commercial lender. And Tunisia's Zitouneh Bank's shareholders also approved the creation of an Islamic bank, a subsidiary in Algeria. In the meantime, Algeria says it's planning a free trade zones with its neighbors in North Africa, except Morocco. Whatever happens there, well, love thy neighbor. Wherever that goes, well, Algeria says it's planning free economic zones and Morocco will not be included. And finally, South Sudan has put pen to paper to a memorandum of understanding with South Africa to help the Sahel economies develop its mining sector and turn into one of the biggest names. The leading mining economy in Africa is the best way to go. And those are your headlines at this time. We've got a whole lot more being covered for you on Frontier Africa Reports. Go on the line and watch all our other shows. Go on our social media handles on X, on LinkedIn, Instagram, on our YouTube. You can subscribe to all our videos. They are free. And please send in your comments as well as queries as well. And of course, you can go on our website, www.frontierafricareports.com. I am Bosi Namafai. I'll see you pretty soon. Have a great day.